Okay, so we're starting where I left off, which is this third mountain range. Yes. So what I have is my purple and blue and a little bit of red mixture that I've used for the other two mountains. And I actually went in and added a little bit more pigment to it because I want to make sure that it's nice and dark. You really want to make sure that there is a variety in these three mountains. So let's make it go up a little more there. So then I'm going to lay this paint on pretty thick. Or at least as thick as I can with the amount I have left. I'm actually going to leave, I think, here. Okay. I'm going to go in, add all this paint, all this pigment in here onto this side. And I'm actually going to go in and lift it a little bit here because I think that's where I'm going to put a pine tree. So I'm going to take my paper towels, fold it up a little bit, and I'm just going to go in and dab it away. So I think I'm going to do a tree here, and I'm going to do a little smaller one in this corner. Yeah, sure, why not? Just got that last little bit of pigment down in here. Darken up the mountains as much as I can. Okay, so then what I'm gonna do is pat that dry so that I can go ahead and do my trees. You can do more trees, you can do one tree, you can do different types of trees, you can do palm trees, you can do no trees. Ideally, you want to make this landscape kind of your own work of art. I really don't want you guys to just be seeing this like, oh, well, she's doing 2 trees. I'm going to do 2 trees too. You can, but I wish you really make it your own art. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do 2 trees on either side of my mountain range. And I'm actually going to try and do some dry brushing using one of those dry on dry techniques. Getting crazy. I don't know which brush. This brush might be a little better. I don't know. I'm going to dry off both of them and see. That way I have options. In wiping it out on this paper towel, I'm also kind of making sure that all of my pigment is out of the brushes, because if I'm about to paint these kind of dark bluish green trees, I don't really want there to be purple like in the middle of them. Then they'll kind of blend a little too much into the rest of my piece. So this one's really feathery. I think I'm gonna use this one instead though, to give me a little bit of a controlled push. I don't know, I'll try it. Worst case scenario, I don't like it and I'll go over it with something else. So to paint my trees, I have my dry brush, I have a little bit of pigment. Actually, I don't trust that brush. I lied, I'm using this one instead because this one I can tell is very dry. Whereas the other one, I couldn't quite tell. Dipping it in that pigment. I'm gonna go ahead and dry it off a little bit on my piece of paper, And then I'm gonna go in, just kind of push some of the pigment up. Kind of push the pigment and the water out of that brush. Gonna go in, push it. So in looking at this, I can see that this pigment isn't much different from my mountains. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna very lightly kind of brush this in with this dry brush. And then I'm gonna mix some green and some red and put some brushes in there too to kind of darken it up. And maybe the red will make it a little more distinct. I can also pull it up into this mountain too. That'll make it a little bit easier. Okay, there we go. Now you can really see it up there. Okay, that's not too shabby. So I'm gonna take a clean brush, clean water, put it in my palette. I'm gonna take some of that pigment. I don't want to take all of it because I might go in with a glaze and kind of put more of it on top. I haven't quite decided. But I'm gonna put some of that in my palette. And I want to darken it up. And the best way to darken up a color is to add its complementary color. What I could do is I could add black to it, but I really want to avoid that because the black almost makes it kind of like gross and muddy. It'll darken it up, but not necessarily in a way you want it to. That might have been too much red. Let's check it. That was definitely too much red. So I'm gonna just take, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put more green in a different portion of my palette. I'll put it here where I already have some green. Take my brush off. My water's getting pretty dirty, so I have to be a little careful. Dip it in that cleaner water. Pick up the green. Don't know if that's in frame, but if it's down here, it should be. Pick up the green, put it in this well. Okay, let's try and add some of this red, but not as much, like I did last time. Okay, I'm gonna add a little more red. It's kind of making it more of what you would consider maybe a forest green. I'm gonna add even more red to that. Playing a dangerous game here, but that's okay. I want to add enough red to my green that it kind of makes it nice and dark. I don't want to go overboard and make it turn red. Okay, like that's pretty good. I really like that color. So hopefully by now that is mostly dry. I'm gonna take my brush, dry it off with my, oh, just kidding, I use the other brush. Take my brush, kind of dry it off on my paper towel. I'm also washing it because I want to start with a clean brush. I need more paper towel. So I think what I'm gonna do, because I just had this thought. I think I'm going to take my darker mixture, brush it in, and then I might just take some brown and sponge it on top just to give it a little bit more texture and make it a little bit darker and kind of give it a different color to make it stand out against the mountains. Let's take this brush. Oh, I'm a little nervous. I really like that. That kind of gave me some more dimension in my tree. This one's a little gross, but that's okay. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is hopefully that'll dry quickly, because I'm just gonna go ahead and mix up my brown right now. Clean off my brush, wipe it off, clean water, put it in a well. Actually, while I'm thinking about it, I might remove some of the water from this purple section at the bottom and see if that helps kind of bring out my trees a little more. Oh yeah, maybe that helps a little. I can't really tell. Let's go ahead and kind of dab away some of the water on this tree too. And then, what was I doing? Brown. Grab my brown, put some in a well, more brown. Then I'm going to test it out on this little paper. I think I want that to be darker. Clean my brush, clean water into the brown. And then I'm going to paint this onto my sponge. I'm going to sponge it down in here. Let's see. If I want more of like a control, I'm going to paint it on this side part. Let's see how it works. Okay, I honestly kind of like that. I think I'm gonna go in. Oh, I should just wait for it to dry, but I'm not going to. Dab up some water here. And do maybe not quite as much. I think I'm just gonna do like a little tiny bit of brown here. I'm gonna dab some of it off because I don't want very much at all. Just enough to add a little bit of something into my tree. I'm gonna add a little bit more green on there because there's a little bit too much brown in one spot, I think. And that is pretty much it for your landscape. I know I kind of lost out on some of these details in my bottom corners, mostly because when I started my gradient wash, I didn't really have a plan for down here. So then by the time that I was putting purple over the green, it got a little funky, because then I had green and then put purple on it and then tried putting green back on top of it, which is fine. It just kind of turned out muddy. So what I might do later is I might go back in and I might just paint these trees black to kind of make them stand out against the rest of my landscape. I don't know, but that's it. Those are the very basics. So for a very, very quick review, you are going to tape off the edges of your paper, pick a place to put your sun or moon. In my case, it's a moon. Put a resist over it. That could be masking tape, that could be crayon, that could be rubber cement. You're going to paint a gradient over the whole thing. Your gradient is going to be analogous, monochromatic, cool colors, warm colors, anything of that sort. It has to be one of the color schemes you've learned about. But you're going to do watercolor painting, paint your gradient. After you paint your gradient, you can use some sort of wet on wet techniques. So I did salt for the illusion of stars, and then I did alcohol for some sort of blooms, and then I had used saran wrap, but then I kind of just covered it up. So like, maybe I'll plan better next time. But yeah, you can use any of those to add a little bit of texture or a little bit of intrigue to your painting. So if this was just a flat wash all up at the top and nothing started until here, it would be a lot more boring than if it'd be more boring. So what I did is I went and put all this salt and stuff to kind of make the sky a little bit more interesting. That way, since my landscape starts so low, it's not just like, oh, there's a bunch of color, oh, there's something. Yeah, so gradient, wet on wet. And then what we did is we did our glazes. If we wanted to go back over colors, which I did with the purple and green. And then when I did my glaze, I also added more salt. So in perfecting your gradient, you can do glazes to change colors up a little bit, re-wet things, do different wet on wet techniques if you want to or if you have to. It depends on what you think. And then I took off the resist for the moon. My moon is too high, so I actually didn't end up going over it with anything. But if your moon is like down here, for example, you could paint part of your mountain over your moon. Totally up to you. It kind of breaks it up a little bit, makes it a little bit less of, oh, there's a big circle. It kind of incorporates it into the landscape. Yeah, so we took off the resist, and then after that we painted our landscape scene. And mine ended up pretty muddy, but that's okay. It's all a learning experience. It's a learning experience for me as much as it is for you. I'm not used to using watercolors, so this was kind of a fun little chance to experiment. So I did my 3 mountains, atmospheric perspective, making sure things in the back are lighter. Little reminder, don't just do mountains and trees, because that's what I did. I'm really strongly encouraging you to choose something else. That doesn't mean, oh, you did mountains, I can't do mountains. But it's kind of, don't copy my painting exactly, because that's really not what I want. I want you to kind of create something that you want to create. So like I said earlier, you could do deserts, you could do palm trees, you could do rocks, you could do like a waterfall, you could do like a lake, you could do pretty much any sort of landscape. It's up to you. Yeah, so I did my 3 mountains, and then I went and tried, keyword there is try, to do my pine trees that I'm probably gonna go back in with black and cover so you can see them better. But that's it, and at the end you have a nice landscape that demonstrates, one, you know color theory a little bit, because you're demonstrating one of those color types, color combinations. You're demonstrating your watercolor techniques, because you can do wet on wet, wet on dry, dry on wet, all sorts of things. All sorts of those techniques we learned about, and then you're done. You have a nice little, I learned a lot about watercolor in a short amount of time.